The first thing you need to do is to make a slip knot. Take your yarn and cross it over in a loop. Then, using the side that is still connected to the skein, take your fingers on the inside of your loop and grab it. Pull it through and pull it tight. Now you have a slip knot. It's called a slip knot because you can make it bigger or smaller by pulling on one end of your yarn. Now that we have this done, we can start what is called the casting on process. Now that you have your slip knot, you can begin the casting on process. This is just taking your yarn that is connected to the skein and making actual stitches on your needle. Slide your slip knot on, then taking the end that is connected to your skein of yarn, take one end and wrap it over towards you. Wrap it over one more time, and then take the first loop that you have and pull it over the second one. Pull it tight, and now you have your second stitch. Let's do this one more time. Take the end that's connected to the skein, wrap it over once, wrap it over a second time, and then take the first loop and pull it over your second. Pull it tight, and now we have 3 stitches. Now that you've cast out all your stitches on, you can do the first basic stitch of knitting, which is called the garter stitch. This involves a second needle. Slide this needle under your first stitch. Then, taking the end that is connected to your skein, which is called your working yarn, pull it up, wrap it around the needle underneath it once. Then, take your original stitch, pull it over with this part still connected. Then, slide the original stitch off. You now have your first stitch of the garter stitch. There's a little poem that goes with it and makes it a little helper. The lamb goes under the fence, runs around the barn, goes over the fence, and goes back under the fence again. Keep doing this until you've done all the original stitches on your first needle. Now that we have our first garter stitch row, the pattern we're going to do today is called a stockinette stitch. This pattern involves 2 different types of stitches, the garter stitch and the purl stitch. Now we're going to show you how to purl. To purl, it's much like the garter, except it's backwards. So instead of taking your needle and putting it underneath this first stitch and forward, you're going to put it in front of this first stitch and forward. So it looks like this. Then, the process is just like the garter. Take your working yarn, wrap it around the first stitch, but not around your first needle here, just around the second one. Pull it underneath and slide it off. Keep doing this until you finish the end of the row. Now you've completed your second row. To do a stockinette pattern, you alternate each row. One row being a garter stitch, and the next one being a purl. You continue going back and forth, alternating garter and purl, until you have the length you desire. Then, you can begin what is called the finishing off process. This is what your stockinette stitch will look like. As you can see, the stitches rotate from garter to purl, and so forth. You can keep doing this process until you get as long as you want, or until your pattern tells you to stop. Now that we've completed our project, we're going to do what is called the finishing off period. To take your work off of your needle without losing in it, it involves a little bit of a 2-step process. First step is cut your working yarn from your skein. You'll want to leave a good amount of room, just in case if you make any mistakes. Now that your working yarn is loose, you can start this process. It requires 2 needles. First, you do it much like you do your garter stitch. Sheep goes under the fence, around the barn, over the fence, and then back under again. Then make a second stitch. Now that you have 2 stitches on here, you're going to take your first stitch and pull it off over the second one. Do your next stitch. Take the first one and pull it off over your new one. You're going to continue doing this until you only have 2 stitches remaining on this needle. As you can tell, as we've been sliding it off, it folds over each other and closes the stitches up. Now that we have our last 2 stitches remaining, you'll take the first one and pull it over again. When you do this, you might want to hold onto your working yarn because if you're not careful, this last stitch will just slide off. Now you have 1 stitch remaining. Slide your needle off, make the hole bigger, take your working yarn and simply pull it through. Pull it tight, clip the ends, and now we have our finished project. This concludes our first lesson in how to knit. In this process, we've learned how to do a slip knot, how to cast on, how to do a purl, how to do a garter stitch, and in the process of combining those 2 stitches, we've made a stockinette pattern.